Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Upper Room. This week we're talking about the Book of Daniel. Book of Daniel, as some of you may know, is the story goes as Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel was also one of the three appointed men by the king in Babylon to interpret dreams for him, and Daniel was the dream interpreter because God gave him this gift of understanding dreams. Now, God also revealed the future to Daniel sometime later after he was thrown into the lion's den. The king built a golden idol, a golden image, according to the dream that he had, and he commanded everyone in his kingdom to worship this image, or they would be thrown into a fiery furnace. And Daniel and his two other companions were Hebrews, and they refused to do this, so the king threw them into the fire, and the king saw another in the fire, which was an angel, that prevented them from getting hurt. Okay, we also see again sometime later, after the king that threw them into the furnace, another king arose. Sometime after that king's rule ended, and Daniel was still part of the kingdom, part of the inside of the palace. This king, he was commanded that no one should worship or no one should pray to worship their gods, and Daniel was seen praying to the God of heaven and earth, and then he threw him into the lion's den, but the lions would not eat him. And the king was happy because he was kind of forced to do this thing according to the law that he decreed, because he liked Daniel. But he said God sent an angel, and God then the angel shut the mouths of the lions. And these men that accused him were later thrown into the lion's den, and they were eaten as soon as they even walked down the ramp. So the book of Daniel is a beautiful story because it shows that Daniel had no fault in him, that those who are pure of heart and those who are true, God protects. And it's also, when we see this time and time again in the lives of the saints, there were many saints who were tried to be, Romans or other kings that didn't worship God and they worshipped other gods. They outlawed Christianity. They killed Christians. Some saints that they would try to kill, whether by burning, whether by drowning, no harm would come to them. And ultimately, they would take the matters into their own hands and behead them. So God is in control of those elements. God is in control of the elements. But God gives man free will. So if a man chooses to kill another person, God has no control over that. God, because we have free will, God will punish the person for taking someone else's life. But as far as trying to throw them in to be burned or throw them in to be drowned, God controls the elements, so He can prevent harm coming to His saints in that way. And it shows proofs of truths about those who follow God and obey Him and love Him, that God protects them. And so the book of Daniel is an example of a man who chooses not to partake in sumptuous food. At one of the feasts, he chooses not to eat sumptuous food. In fact, it specifies in the book, that in the Bible, that he ate only vegetables. So he ate only vegetables for a time, and he did not partake in some of the sumptuous foods that the king offered. So, and then later we see that God reveals to him what's going to happen in the future. So, as we see in lots of the other prophets, the major prophets and the minor prophets in the Old Testament, that God revealed something some insight into the coming of the Messiah, to the one who was to come, to the Lamb of God, who would gather all the tribes of Israel, and who would be a sacrifice for their sins of his people, to save them for the sins of his people. And Jesus did all those things. So I like the book of Daniel very much. I highly recommend that you read it. Uh, um, and the best part about it is that we can see how a righteous man behaves, acts, and his relationship towards God, and how he speaks about God. And they even were willing to sacrifice their lives to not um, to not disobey God, to not disobey what God commanded, and God protected them, and he proved to everyone that they were righteous. God showed everyone that they were righteous in doing this thing of risking their lives to not bow down to a golden statue, to a false god. So I just want to say that, because I'm reading the book of Daniel right now. Not watching, reading the book of Daniel right now, and I just finished it the other day. It's a wonderful story. So thanks again for watching Upper Room. I recommend that you read the book of Daniel, and I'll see you again next week.